played well over 20,000 hours of MMOs all combined through all of the reviews I've done on this channel, to the MMOs that I played when I was younger: Elder Scrolls Online, Terra, Trove, World of Warcraft, Guild Wars 2, and many more MMOs that I have played. And I can honestly say that throughout my history of playing these MMOs, I've always been in the top 1% of players, whether that is playing tank, DPS, or healer. It didn't matter, I always reached the top 1% and started completing the highest tier dungeons or the highest tier raids. So today I want to go over what I believe are the 5 best tips for new MMO players or people who just want to get better at MMOs in general. The first one that I want to talk about is that classes and character creation doesn't matter as much as people think. I always see people kind of get stuck on character creation. They'll look up videos, what is the best class in the game? They'll look up like all this different stuff about the game and try to figure out what they want to play. But really, the classes don't matter at the end of the day. Now, is there always going to be a min-max on certain classes? Yes, 100%. Will you always see that there will be classes that will do slightly more damage than others? Yes, that is 100% true as well. But at the end of the day, you should play the class that's going to make you play the game longer. So if you have a healer and a tank side by side, and you think, wow, a healer is more useful than a tank, but you think that you are going to enjoy playing tank more, then play tank instead. I know it's kind of scary to do something along those lines, but when you play something in that way, you will play the game for 10 times longer and it will be 10 times more fun for you. If you are looking for what to play in your general character customization though, instead of figuring out what is the best, there's 2 things that I would specifically look for. And that is, one, either go look at like lore videos and try to figure out like what you kind of vibe with in the lore, like whether that's a race, a class, or whatever, something that you kind of find cool. And the second one is to literally just go, this is what I want to play. So if it's like, I want to play a DPS mage, then play a DPS mage. You want to play a tank that's like a tiger, then play a tank tiger. Whatever it is, just play what you desire and don't focus too much on what is the mid-max. Unless your goal is to maybe join one of the top guilds in whatever game you're trying to play, then the class doesn't really matter because no one is going to discriminate against you if you are just a, in general, good player. Next up is play the game at your own pace. I see this so many times in the MMO community where people will think, wow, I gotta rush the end game, or wow, I gotta rush that dungeon, or whatever it is, but genuinely just slow down and play the game the way that you want to play it. If you're a player who loves endgame, then maybe rushing to endgame is obviously the play, but if you're someone who's maybe a more casual player, focus on doing the side quests, focus on learning the story, focus on doing all of the little side things before you just hop straight to in-game. Does that sound like it's going to take you a lot more time? Yes, 100% it will, but you will enjoy the game a lot more because it won't feel like the pressure of the entire game and the entire world is on your shoulders to reach the end game. Instead of trying to play at the pace of these super crazy players who have 18 hours to play every single day, play the game the way that you want to play the game. This next one really goes hand in hand with the last one, so planning out your time to play the game. Let's say you only have 1 to 2 hours to play every single day, and that's the only thing that you're going to be doing in that 1 to 2 hour time frame. Plan out what you're going to do in that time. See, a lot of players think that these guys have 18 hours to play and they're just sitting there non-stop playing for 18 hours. But I'm going to tell you right now, if anybody tells you that, they're either lying or they're getting paid to play the game. In reality, the people that are on the game for 18 hours a day, they might play for 6 to 10 hours, but there's so much time where they're just sitting there AFK, they're probably reading forums, reading patch notes, watching a video, or waiting in a queue for that matter. So if you get on the game and you are already prepared for some basic stuff, like let's say you want to run a dungeon, then you should be like, okay, I'm going to log in today and my goal is to try to run that dungeon. Or if you want to get a quest done, my goal is to go get these quests done. Because if you can then plan stuff out, you can still make a lot of progress in a MMO. And then after you make that progress, if you have time left over, you can like go do quests, go explore, go do something else that you find enjoyable in the game. And this is where a lot of players kind of fall through, where they say like, oh, I only have an hour to play, I only have 30 minutes to play. And that is perfectly okay, but just use those 30 minutes, use that hour wisely, and really just lock into the game and figure out what you want to do in that short amount of time. Now, is there some things where you just genuinely won't be able to do it? Like, let's say if you want to play World of Warcraft and do some of the big time raids, yeah, if you only have an hour to play, you're not going to be able to do the raids most of the time unless everybody is pixel perfect in that raid. But outside of that, there's so much more content that you could be doing that isn't that raid. So really, you could do all that other content and then plan that raid for a later date when you have like a day off or something. This is what I did a lot through the time that I was going through high school, is I would get home, and since I had homework for a lot of the time and I didn't spend a lot of time on my Xbox, I would plan out like an hour or two of playtime before bed where I'd be able to get in 3 to 4 dungeons, and I would be able to really just sit down and make as much progress in a short amount of time that I could before I had to go to bed and get up for school the next day. Next up, we have the most important thing on this list, standing skills and when to use them. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, well, I already know how to use my skills. I've read them and I know exactly what they are. But do you really know how to use your skills, or do you just know what your skills do? Because there's a very large difference between those two things. You see, the bigger high-end players that understand their skills and when to use them will go, okay, this skill has a 13-second cooldown, this skill has a 15-second cooldown, and both of these skills kind of go hand in hand together. Maybe one of the skills makes it where the enemy becomes vulnerable, and the one with the 15-second cooldown does a big amount of damage. So you would always make sure that you're using the one that would make them vulnerable, and then you would use the one that makes you do a lot of damage. And this really goes for anything. Learn your skill combos. If you learn your skill combos, you can play any class in the game, you can play any race in any game. It won't matter, because if you are just superior at using all of your skills, understanding the cooldowns, understanding when to use them, understanding the importance of why you're using them for your team, then you will go so much higher than any other player that isn't doing that. That is the massive difference. For example, let's say you're watching some World of Warcraft raids. You can see that a lot of the people that do high-end damage in World of Warcraft raids usually only use 2 to 3 abilities, and it's not because they don't know what their other abilities do. Those 2 to 3 abilities just make them significantly more powerful against bosses or ads or whatever it is, because those 3 on rotation are just way better, way faster, and way stronger than anything else they could be doing. For example, if I'm a healer and I have a skill that says it heals for 40% of someone's max life, then maybe add a extension or see if you can change the settings where you can change people's healths to a percentage, and you can see when they're at 60%, and then you know that is a good time to heal, so that way you're not just spam healing. And then there's also the other side of that, where people won't use things until you're very, very low, and it will throw raids because they don't understand how to do a self-sustain. So understanding stuff like the percentages, when to cast stuff, when not to cast stuff, what the buffs really do, what your rotation should be, goes a very long way. It's something super simple to learn, because most of the time MMO rotations are 4 to 5 skills to 8 skills max, but most of the time it's 3 to 4 skills really that you're primarily using, and then the rest of your skills are last minute skills, or there's something that you only need to use if you're about to instantly die, or it's something that you use before the fight even begins. The final thing I'll say is to take advantage of the internet. There's so many people in the game already using the internet to their advantage, to learn new builds, to learn new updates, to learn how boss mechanics work, whatever it is. But I will notice there's so many times where a player will go in to want to do a dungeon, or a raid, or a boss fight, or whatever it is, and they won't ever look up the boss fight, they won't look up the mechanics, they won't understand what they need to bring, or anything of that sort. If you stop for like 5 minutes and you pull up a YouTube video like on your phone, or on Google, or whatever it is, you could easily look up that boss fight and just watch for the exact mechanics and just try to avoid those mechanics in the fight. But there's so many times in older MMOs still to this day, especially World of Warcraft and Guild Wars, from my experience, where people will come into a raid and they will have no clue how a boss fight works, and we're doing a very top of the line raid and they don't know what circle to dodge or where to go when a boss does a certain thing. But I think the big takeaway is that you end up wasting so much more time by not knowing mechanics than just by going and watching a 5-minute video. Because I guarantee there's going to be people that are going to go, oh, well, I don't want to watch the 5-minute video, that's a waste of time. And to those people, you are incorrect, because genuinely there is just so much value in the internet these days. If we were back in like the early 2000s, I could understand, but now that we're living in 2025, the ability to use YouTube to learn all boss mechanics is just crazy. And I'm not saying you're not allowed to fail ever in a boss fight. You know, stuff happens. Sometimes you can't get to a certain position depending on how things are going, and that makes sense. But I'm talking about people who genuinely will go in and throw the fight for an hour instead of just watching a YouTube video. That was 5 tips that will guarantee make you a better MMO player. If you're an old MMO player, let me know in the comments below if you have any more tips for new players coming into MMOs. But besides that, I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.